Did you know that, globally, 1 in 3 people report having experienced racial discrimination? An unsettling statistic, isn't it? This is the harsh reality we live in. Across the globe, racism continues to plague our societies, inflicting devastating effects on individuals and communities alike. Racism, a belief that one race is superior to others, manifests itself in various ways. It could be as subtle as a condescending remark, or as blatant as violent hate crimes. This systemic issue not only breeds inequality and injustice, but also hampers societal progress. It chips away at the very essence of our shared humanity, leaving scars that run deep and persist through generations. The psychological impact on those subjected to racial discrimination is profound. It can lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression. On a societal level, racism fuels social division, conflict, and even violence. Today, we will expose the top 5 nations where racism is most prevalent. The findings might surprise you. Stay tuned as we delve into this pressing global issue. Starting our countdown at number 5 is a nation that prides itself on its rich history and diverse culture, yet beneath the surface, a darker reality persists. Pervasive, systemic racism. This is a land where racism isn't just an isolated incident, but a deeply ingrained societal issue, often masked by the veneer of unity and diversity. The racism here manifests in various forms, from discriminatory laws and policies to racial profiling to overt racial slurs and hate crimes. One glaring example is the nation's immigration policies, which disproportionately target and discriminate against certain ethnic groups, often under the guise of national security. Let's unpack that a bit. These policies, while they may seem neutral on the surface, are often designed in such a way that they disproportionately affect certain racial or ethnic groups. This is a classic example of institutional racism, where systemic structures and policies perpetuate racial inequality. Moreover, racial profiling, the act of suspecting or targeting a person on the basis of their race, is rampant. It's not uncommon for individuals of certain ethnic backgrounds to be disproportionately targeted, stopped, searched, or detained simply because of the color of their skin or their ethnic origin. And then there are the racial slurs and hate crimes. It's deeply troubling that in this day and age people can still be targeted, harassed, or even physically assaulted simply because of their race or ethnicity. These acts of violence serve as a stark reminder of the deep-seated racism that still exists within this society. Unfortunately, these instances are not isolated events, but rather, they are symptomatic of a much larger, systemic issue. And while there has been some progress over the years, the fact remains that racism is still deeply embedded within the fabric of this society. Despite international outcry, racism remains deeply ingrained in this nation. The fight against racism is an ongoing battle, and it's a battle that we all have a responsibility to take part in. It's not enough to simply condemn racism. We must actively work to dismantle the systems and structures that allow it to persist. Moving on to number 4 in our list, we delve into a nation that has been making headlines for its discriminatory practices. This country, while rich in cultural heritage and natural beauty, has unfortunately been marked by a dark undercurrent of racism. Let's start with its systemic issues. This nation has been known to implement policies that disproportionately affect certain racial and ethnic groups. This is not a mere coincidence, but a deliberate act of systemic racism. It's not just about a few isolated incidents. It's about a system that, by design or by neglect, consistently favors one race over others. Take, for example, the housing policies. Certain communities, primarily those of a particular racial background, are often pushed into overcrowded, underdeveloped neighborhoods with limited access to quality education and healthcare. This, in turn, perpetuates a cycle of poverty and marginalization, making it incredibly difficult for these communities to break free and improve their circumstances. Moreover, this nation has seen numerous instances of racial profiling and police brutality, primarily targeting people of color. Such actions are not only inhumane but also a gross violation of basic human rights. They instill fear and mistrust amongst those targeted, further widening the racial divide. In the realm of employment, we see discrimination rearing its ugly head again. People from certain racial backgrounds are often overlooked for promotions, paid less than their counterparts, or even rejected outright based on their race. This not only stifles their professional growth, but also reinforces the stereotypes that certain races are less competent or less valuable than others. It's important to note that racism isn't just about blatant acts of hatred. It's also about the subtle, insidious ways in which certain races are marginalized and discriminated against. It's about the silent assumptions, the unconscious biases, and the unspoken rules that perpetuate racial inequality. Unfortunately, these practices continue to foster a culture of discrimination and exclusion. They create an environment where racism is normalized and accepted, where it becomes a part of everyday life. It's a sobering reminder that we still have a long way to go in our fight against racism. Next up, standing at number 3, is the third most racist nation on our list is one that might surprise you. It's a country where the seeds of discrimination are deeply sown into the fabric of society, sprouting into a tree of intolerance that overshadows the lives of many of its citizens. In this nation, racism isn't just an undercurrent, but a glaringly visible part of everyday life. It manifests in various forms, from the subtle to the overt, and is deeply entrenched in the societal norms and practices. To give you a clearer picture, let's delve into some specific instances. Imagine being denied a job opportunity not because of your qualifications or lack thereof, but simply because of your ethnicity. That's a reality for many people in this country, where racial profiling is rampant and largely unchecked. Consider the education system, where students from certain ethnic groups are systematically disadvantaged. They are often segregated, given fewer resources and less attention, leading to a significant achievement gap. This is not just unfair, it's a blatant example of institutional racism. Then there's the housing sector. Here, racial discrimination is so ingrained that it has become almost normalized. People from certain racial backgrounds find it harder to rent or buy properties in certain neighborhoods due to discriminatory practices by landlords and real estate agents. Why are these instances considered racist? Racism, at its core, is about power and prejudice. It's about one group maintaining dominance over others based on their perceived racial superiority. When a nation's systems and institutions perpetuate such discrimination, it's a clear sign of racism. It's heartbreaking to see such levels of discrimination in our modern world, but recognizing and acknowledging it is the first step towards dismantling it. As we move forward, we must strive to challenge and change these prejudiced norms and practices for a more inclusive and equitable world. Just missing the top spot at number 2 is now. We step into a nation where racism is a pervasive issue, manifesting itself in multiple forms. This country faces a deep-seated problem of racial discrimination, from the subtle biases in everyday interactions to the systemic structures that perpetuate inequality. Let's delve into some examples. Imagine being denied a job solely based on your racial background, or being subjected to racial slurs on a daily basis. Picture law enforcement disproportionately targeting certain ethnic groups, resulting in a pattern of racial profiling. These instances are not isolated incidents, but rather they form a disturbing pattern that reflects the nation's struggle with racism. Why is this considered racist? Simply put, it boils down to prejudice and discrimination based on a person's race or ethnicity. It is the belief that one race is superior or inferior to another, which is fundamentally unjust and morally wrong. This nation's issues with racism are deeply rooted and require urgent attention. And now, the nation that tops our list as the most racist is, here we are, standing at the pinnacle of prejudice, the zenith of xenophobia. A nation where discrimination isn't just a societal issue, but a systematic one. A place where the color of your skin, your ethnic background, your religion, or even your language can dictate the opportunities available to you. Imagine a society where law enforcement, education, and employment sectors are all steeped in racial bias, where stereotypes are not just perpetuated, but are institutionalized, where hate crimes are more than just isolated incidents, but a pattern of behavior deeply ingrained in the fabric of the nation. This is not just racism, It's systemic racism. It's a deeply rooted problem that goes beyond individual prejudices and biases. The nation we're discussing has made it an integral part of its societal structure. This nation holds the dubious distinction of being the most racist, a title no nation should aspire to. Thank you for joining us on this eye-opening journey. We've traversed the globe, uncovering the unsettling truths of deep-seated racism in 5 nations. It's a harsh reality, but one we must confront head-on. Remember, change begins with awareness and understanding. Taking a stand against racism isn't just a choice, it's a responsibility we all share. You can play a part in this global fight for equality. How, you ask? Simple. Start by spreading the word. Share this video with your circles, engage in conversations about racism, and educate those around you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, follow us on our social media platforms, and like this video. Your comments are invaluable. They fuel the discourse on racism and inspire others to join the fight. By working together, we can challenge these racial prejudices and create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Together, we can make a difference. Stand against racism today and every day.